Is your deadline still standing for Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire tomorrow, or is that fluid now?
It's going to be up to him. We're going to see what he has to say. It's going to be up to him. Very disappointed.
For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Tony Halpin out of Dubai. Morning, Tony. Happy Friday to you. We just heard from the president there. He says that he could meet Putin soon, even without Zelensky. Is that a sign of more capitulation to come from the US at this now bilateral meeting?
Yes, good morning. Well, this is the Kremlin's ideal scenario, that they want to get Putin in a room with Trump, essentially alone, without Zelensky, in order to influence the US on an outcome that will be favourable to Russia. And clearly, from a Ukrainian and European point of view, that would be very worrying indeed if Trump was willing to sit down with Putin to discuss an outcome in Ukraine that didn't include Ukraine, which of course is a very different position from his predecessor Joe Biden, who famously said, you know, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. And in this situation, we'd have Putin and Trump sitting down together without Ukrainian presence, without a European presence to influence the US thinking, and Russia would be able to present its view of the war and the view of any settlement to that war. So that would be very much in Russia's interest.
Well, yeah, you wonder if he'll make this concession, whether what Trump would likely accept from Putin to drop secondary tariffs on buyers of Russian oil.
Yes, as you've noted, today is the deadline. President Trump was very clear on what Putin had to do in order to avoid secondary sanctions, which was to agree to a truce by August the 8th. There's no sign at all that the Kremlin is willing to announce a truce, and so far at least we believe that there's going to be a summit meeting between Trump and Putin without having first to concede such a truce. So it's very difficult in those circumstances for Ukraine and Europe to have confidence that Trump won't give away other things which they consider to be too much of a concession if he sits down with Mr. Putin without them present in the room.
And then we've had Putin and the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff also said to have discussed US-Russia relations at that meeting. How could they change?
Yes, I mean, the whole Russian idea has been to try and develop bilateral relations with the US separately from resolving the war in Ukraine. They don't think, in fact, that there is a resolution to the war which meets Russian demands, and they want to continue fighting. But they also want to develop a good relationship with Trump because they want to build business relationships with the US. And they see an opportunity to try and develop those bilateral relations separately with Trump and separately from any outcome in the war. And so again, the US, I think, is entering a potential meeting with the Russians with perhaps a different view of that. They might still be trying to connect an outcome that resolves the war in Ukraine to developing relations between the US and Russia. But Russia views it very differently. They see those as two separate tracks.